importance of caring when it doesn't matter to you. The reason that I'm standing here today is because people in my life cared when it didn't matter. Just 2 weeks ago, I was organizing a hackathon at my university when I noticed that a team of high schoolers had registered for the event. Now, in theory, this sounds awesome, right? Like, these high schoolers are super interested and engaged, and they want to come compete at a hackathon. In practice, it actually causes so many liability issues, it's not even funny, because they're not in college and they're underage. It's just a whole problem. Well, I was lucky enough to be able to get in touch with the right contacts and get approval for them to participate. I thought the problem was solved, right? Crisis averted, everything's good. I went to my fellow organizers and I shared this with them, and I was met with a very intriguing response. Some of their answers to me were, "Why do you care about this? I don't want to follow more rules. Why should we actually try to make this happen?" Those words rang in my head as thoughts of my own journey came up. Something as seemingly simple and insignificant as competing on a high school robotics team launched my own career. But my start on the team wasn't the easiest thing in the world. I was passionate, I was a little bit stubborn, and I had a drive to learn that exceeded what any of the mentors on the team could have expected. They even scoffed at my insistence on wanting to learn and work across hardware and software boundaries, on top of participating in community outreach. And so, my first month on the team, I was absolutely miserable. I even thought about quitting. But one mentor saw this. He recognized it, and he chose to care. I still remember him coming up to me and asking me to work on a project that was more complex than any of the ones I had previously completed. That project eventually morphed into more projects that taught me more about engineering principles, which eventually turned into him spending countless hours teaching me to run a CNC milling machine, which eventually grew into a lasting friendship. It meant the world to me at the time, and to this day, still inspires me to be that person for others. It changed my life, quite simply. This is just one instance of someone in my life choosing to care and making an impact that is absolutely immeasurable. The trajectory of my whole life has been altered by those who chose to care even when they didn't have a vested interest, when it didn't matter to them. As a preface, and maybe you've already gotten this from my introduction, I've always been interested in aviation. Planes, rockets, anything that flies. A lot of the fabs can attest that I've probably mentioned a plane at some point during this meetup. But I grew up in a small town. I didn't come from a family that was particularly well off. I didn't go to some prestigious, top-ranking university. No one in my family was a pilot, and no one was even interested in aviation in my family. And yet today, I get to stand here and say that I'm quite literally someone who got to work on hardware that's currently floating around in space somewhere at this very moment. On top of holding my commercial pilot's license. And that is a sentence that I never dreamt that I would be saying. Thinking back to my mentor's actions that day, the thought, the idea that an altruistic action so small could be so impactful, I was initially so confused and eventually angered at the other organizers in their response. This hackathon could be the opportunity that inspires those high schoolers to take an existing passion and turn it into a concrete project, or even explore a new interest entirely. Things that could help them get into a particular college or university, or even change their careers or lives in the long term. It could literally change their lives. And so I couldn't understand how these organizers could so readily throw that away. But it was so easy for them to not care because it really didn't affect them particularly. As a first-generation college student about to graduate, I've already had so many opportunities and experiences that I never could have even dreamed of, like standing here on the stage right now. And it was all made possible by people in my life who chose to care, to show up, to make things happen even when they didn't have a vested interest. Those who mentored my robotics teams growing up because they saw the impact that it could have. My flight instructor who took high school me seriously and continues to encourage and support me even now. My mentors at my internships who had no obligation to go above and beyond to shape me into the engineer and the person that I am today. These interactions have made me someone who wants to guide, mentor, and ultimately, above all else, care about others. Seeing others around me accomplish things that they thought were improbable or even impossible is so motivating and gratifying. Even more so if I can be the person that other people were for me. I should note that caring can have a cost. It can be hard to take the time, make the effort, and genuinely care when you have no vested interest or stake. But your choices, your actions, your words, and your care, or the lack thereof, will change the lives of those around you. And when the opportunity is changing someone's life, in whatever form, big or small, the cost of not caring is simply too high. Throughout my life, I have learned that much of my success up until this point is because of people who cared. People around me and the choices they made helped me write my own story and shape me into who I am today. And the choices that you make will change the lives and stories of those around you. And so I urge you to choose to care, even when it doesn't seem to matter. Thank you.